Welcome again, everyone, to the 2026 Library of Congress Literacy Awards Applicant Information Session. My name is Judy Lee, and I manage the Library of Congress Literacy Awards program. I'm joined by my colleague James Santos, who helps me oversee the program, as well as several special guests from our Literacy Awards Advisory Board, and everyone will have an opportunity to introduce themselves later throughout the presentation. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. All right, so before we dive into our content, I did want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available on our website at www.loc.gov/literacy. Just keep in mind that it does take about 2 weeks for that recording to post, so unfortunately, you will not have immediate access to the recording, but the presentation slides should be available starting tomorrow. So again, just a reminder that we are recording it. Everyone will have access to the recording about a couple weeks from today. Throughout this presentation, we want this session to be as valuable to you as possible. Please feel free to use the Q&A box to submit any questions you have for the advisory board or for us as staff. We will do our best to answer your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A box. We also have time reserved at the end to do a live Q&A as well. And yeah, we hope to answer as many questions as possible over the next 90 minutes. So again, today the purpose really is to focus on the 2026 application package, the application process, and to answer any questions you might have about filling out your own application forms. Before we do that, I will be providing a little bit of a brief history on the program. I'll let you know what the prize categories are this year. They're the same as the prize categories from last year. We'll do a deeper dive into the application forms. We'll remind you what a full application consists of, full application package. We will be going over some feedback from our reviewers and provide some tips on how to write your application based on our experience and based on previous years of reviewing applications and selecting winners and honorees. Then we'll just wrap up the presentation with just some tips on submitting your final application, and then we'll do our Q&A. So moving on to the next section here, just a brief history of the Literacy Awards program. For those who are joining us for the first time, the Literacy Awards program was established in 2013 by the Library of Congress and supported by philanthropist David M. Rubenstein, who's been with the program and supporting it again since 2013. We had exciting news a few years ago when the Kizak Family Foundation made a generous gift to expand our program. It allowed us to add several new prize categories that we could recognize literacy organizations for. And it also allows us to meet and maintain relationships with previous winners and honorees, which has been really fun for us to be able to implement and to continue engaging with our growing network of Literacy Award recipients. Just a quick fact from ever since 2013. So from the start of the program, we have awarded over $4.3 million to more than 200 organizations located all around the world. So 42 countries are represented by our winners and honorees. That's not the same thing as the reach that our winners and honorees have. So the 42 countries are just where the winners and honorees are headquartered, but their reach is much greater than that collectively. So the 2026 call for applications, you know that we launched our application package last Monday on January 5th. The applications will stay open and we will continue to collect completed application packages through 11:59 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, February 17th. So the application period is 6 weeks. We invite any organization or program that does not operate on a for-profit basis to apply. So this could be a pretty straightforward nonprofit or tax-exempt organization. Educational institutions are invited to apply. Indian tribes and tribal organizations, or even projects created or sponsored by any level of government. And so we encourage you to take a look at our eligibility requirements, and if you feel like you meet the descriptions, we encourage you to apply. We do announce our winners and honorees on September 8th every single year. For those who don't know, September 8th is International Literacy Day, as recognized by the United Nations. And so we like to participate on that special day by announcing our winners and honorees. Whether you are selected as a winner or not, everyone will be contacted no later than September 8th this year. So you will find out one way or another what your award status is no later than September 8th. Why should you apply for the Literacy Awards? Well, for several reasons, and three that we'd love to point out. You will receive public recognition for your outstanding literacy programming through the Library of Congress. You'll also receive a cash prize with zero stipulations, so you can apply your award funds however you'd like. This is what differentiates us from maybe a more traditional grant program. These are prize funds truly to recognize the outstanding work that you've already accomplished. So we will not follow up with you and ask you how you spent your funding or to report back to us on how you applied your funding. This is really a gift to you to celebrate your accomplishments. You'll also have the opportunity to join a growing network of past winners and honorees. As mentioned before, we have over 200 organizations recognized and part of this growing literacy awards, truly like a professional network of organizations. And again, as I mentioned briefly earlier, through the Kizak Family Foundation gift, we're able to engage with our winners and honorees more intentionally than we ever have been able to in the program's history. So we hope that these are things you could look forward to and that this will inspire you to consider applying. We'll keep reviewing the steps for applying throughout the presentation, but to just sort of give you a preview and to kind of lay the groundwork, the steps that you'll be taking to submit a full application package is, of course, to begin by reviewing the application FAQ and application instructions. This is not necessarily required in the sense that we're not going to test you on the information in there. However, it is a really hefty packet with a lot of valuable information that I think you may find to be really helpful to review before you jump into your application forms. So I encourage you at minimum to just skim through the FAQ and instructions packet, which is already available on our website under the Apply page. You will be tasked with deciding whether you're going to submit a top prize application form or an emerging strategies application form. You only need to submit one of the two, and we'll go over how to make that decision in a few slides. You can download and complete the general applicant information form right now if you'd like from our website. Everyone, all applicants, no matter if you're interested in the top prize or the emerging strategies, everyone is required to submit a general applicant form. Again, you will be asked to decide whether you want to submit a top prize application questions form or an emerging strategies applicant question form. And everyone will again be required to submit 2 recommendation letters as part of their complete application package. All applications are due. You can just email them to us, literacyawards@loc.gov, no later than 11:59 p.m. on February 17th. This is a hard deadline. Anything that we receive after 12 a.m. that evening, we will not be able to accept this year, and we will kindly respond and encourage you to consider applying in 2027. So again, February 17th, that's a Tuesday, no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time to the literacy.awards@loc.gov. Okay, so now that we know generally what is involved in submitting an application package, just want to review the prize categories that are available to you this year. Of course, starting with our very top prize, the David Rubenstein Prize at $150,000, we can recognize one organization under this particular category, and it'll go to an organization for their outstanding and measurable contribution to increasing literacy. And this organization can be based either in the US or abroad. So you could be working internationally, you could be based in the US and serving US populations. You could be in the US, but you serve international populations. Those would all qualify for the David M. Rubenstein Prize. Next, we have the Kizak Family Foundation Prize. We can award one organization for this category. We'll award them with $100,000. for their work happening again, either within the United States or abroad. And this goes to an organization that is having an outsized impact on literacy relative to their size or years of operation. So internally, we often refer to this organization as small but mighty. They could be small in terms of staffing size relative to the impact that they have, the size of the impact that they have regionally, population-wise. Or it's maybe years of operation. So they're pretty young, but they're already having such a significant impact on their community and the population that we want to recognize them for that. So that's the Kizak Family Foundation Prize. It's for $100,000 to one organization. Next, we have the American Prize and the International Prize. These are very similar. They're each awarded to one organization, $50,000 for each organization, and it goes to one that's making a significant and measurable contribution to increasing literacy. The difference would be one of the American Prize is dedicated to an organization based in the US, serving a US population. The International Prize is reserved for an organization that is serving an international population. So again, I just want to clarify here with the International Prize, the location of the organization, it doesn't matter. They could be based in the US, but it's the population that they're serving is what distinguishes them from, let's say, the American Prize. So they could be an organization abroad, serving a population abroad, or they could be a US-based organization serving a population abroad, and they would still be eligible for the International Prize. All right. We also have the Successful Practices Honorees category. These allow the Literacy Awards to recognize up to 15 organizations for their successful implementation of a specific literacy promotion practice. If you want to get a sense of the different successful practices that we've recognized in previous years, I encourage you to go on the Literacy Awards website. If you go on the winners and honorees page, and if you click on each year, there is something called a story map that we create each year featuring the winners and honorees. And on that story map, you'll be able to see the different successful practices categories for that year. So things like innovative approaches to promoting literacy, engaging volunteers, engaging new and young populations. So there's some ideas of the different successful practices we've recognized. And each successful practice honoree will be awarded $10,000. So 15 organizations will be awarded $10,000. One thing I do want to remind you here is there is no extra work you have to do to express that you're interested in the Successful Practices Honoree category as an applicant. You will automatically be considered for the Successful Practices Honoree category simply by submitting a top prize application form. Lastly, we have the Emerging Strategies Honorees category, thanks to the Kislak Family Foundation. This is a new category we were able to add a couple years ago. And this allows us to recognize up to 5 organizations each year that are up and coming. So these are younger in years of experience. It's typically a literacy initiative that's been launched within the past 5 years. That's actually a hard rule that we have. So if you are a literacy initiative that was established in 2018, which is more than 5 years ago, we encourage you to submit a top prize application form because you will not be eligible for the Emerging Strategies Honorees category. However, if you have a literacy initiative that was established 2021 and afterwards, you are a great fit for the Emerging Strategies Honorees category. We'll be able to award $5,000 to up to 5 organizations under this category. And for this one, there is a very specific application question form that we would ask you to complete in order to compete for this prize category. Okay. And just to wrap up here, here's just another visual representation of what I've been trying to describe over the past few slides. A full application package will consist of 3 components. Again, the general applicant information form, which we'll go over in greater detail in a couple of slides. everybody that is interested in a literacy award and everyone that is submitting a literacy award application will complete and submit the general applicant information form. Following that logic, everyone will also submit 2 recommendation letters as part of their complete application package. So everyone is submitting a general applicant information form and 2 recommendation letters. This is different, slightly different from how our application packages looked in previous years. This year, we're asking you to decide whether you'll be submitting a top prize or an emerging strategies application question form, and you must complete just one of them. We encourage you to just choose one, really based on the number of years that you've been operating or that your literacy initiative has been operating. And your, again, application package will include these 3 components. Where you want to be careful is just deciding whether you'll be applying for a top prize or the Emerging Strategies Honorees recognition. And lastly, as I mentioned before, all of the application forms and components, FAQ, and instructions are available currently on our website. If you go to www.loc.gov/literacy, click on the Apply section, and then the forms will be available for download. They are available this year in PDF as well as Word document. So whichever format works better for you and your computer system, please feel free to choose either one. And with that, I'm going to pass things over to my colleague, James.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending our information session. My name is James Santos. I am the Administrative Assistant for the Literacy Awards Program, which means you'll likely be hearing a lot from me if you have any questions regarding your application for the Literacy Awards Program. I'll talk about, of course, completing our application form, starting with the General Application Information Form. Please note that all applicants are required to submit the general applicant information form. So whether you're applying for a top prize or emerging strategies honoree application, you must submit this form to complete your application package. So to go over the applicant information form, like it suggests, this is information about the applicant. So our first section is an introduction, your applicant status. You're listing every year that your organization has submitted a literacy awards application. So if you have submitted an application in 2016 and 2018, you add those dates. If you're new and you're submitting your application for the first time, you would just select NA. And this is for us. How did you hear about the Literacy Awards? We're always curious about our outreach efforts, and we really want to know what is working and what isn't. So we encourage you to be as specific as possible when letting us know about how you found out about the awards themselves. So whether that's word of mouth, social media, anything that'll help us spread the word is beneficial. Section 2, we're looking at our organizational information. So you are completing this section using, like it suggests, your organization's information. First, we want to know where your organization's headquarter office is located. So your main office. We'd love you to list the city and state. We know some organizations have branch or excuse me, if they have any other physical office locations. So if you're based in New York, but you have branch sites in, say, Texas, you can list those offices as well. This is specifically for US-based applicants. You must enter your employer identification number. For international organizations that do not have an EIN, you'll be required to submit a letter or some other form of documentation that proves your nonprofit status. So that'll be in addition to your application submitting that form. And for our last section in the organizational information section, we want to know about your organization. So you'll share a brief description, including your mission, vision statement, and attaching your organizational logo. For section 3, we're learning about your organizational leadership. So you'll enter the information for at least 2 and up to 3 individuals in your leadership. So that can be your CEO or program director, grant managers. We're looking to see your leadership. Um, Additionally, in this section, we'd love for you to provide a brief overview of your board's composition. Um, Specifically, we really want to know that your board is built in a way that advances your strategic vision. Um, so if you're looking at this section, just consider how your board is built and what positions or composition looks like that helps the goals of your organization. And section 4, as we've stated before, we do require recommendation letters. So this is where you'll enter the information for the individuals writing your recommendation letters. Now, we've been talking about this briefly, but you are either selecting the top prize application form or the emerging strategies form. You cannot submit both application forms. You must pick one or the other. And here's how you'll decide. So you'll use the top prize application form if you're interested in one of the 4 top prizes. That's our Rubenstein Prize, our Kislak Prize, our American Prize, or our International Prize. One of the distinctions between the top prize and emerging strategies application is that your organization or initiative that you're applying on behalf of must have been operating for more than 5 years at the time of applying. So anything beyond 2021. Um, and you must respond to all 6 components of the evaluation criteria. And to note, you will also notice that we have a successful practices honorees designation. All applications received that submit on behalf using a top prize application form will automatically be considered for this category. And second, if you are applying with the emerging strategies application form, your organization or literacy initiative must be operating for 5 years or less at the time of applying. So between 2021 and now, if your organization or literacy initiative has been established, you'd apply using the emerging strategies form. In this application, you're demonstrating your potential for growth and the impact that you've seen within the 5 years that you've been operating. Now we'll briefly just go into completing the top prize application question form. This is looking very similar to the general information form. It's an overview. So we're looking for your organization name. This should be consistent with the name that you submit in the applicant information form. We're also curious about who is completing this application. So you're providing name and contact information of the individual completing the form. Please note that this is important because whoever is completing the application will be our point person for any communications regarding your award status or anything else. So please have this individual be someone who is available and responsive to emails. For section 3, we're looking at applicant information. So this is where you'd indicate whether you're applying on behalf of your entire organization or a specific program or literacy initiative within your organization. So the example we have here is, so Acme Book is the organization. If they're applying just on behalf of themselves, they'd apply for Acme Book. But say you're Acme Book and you have a program called Reading Cartoons, and you want to apply based on that program, you would specifically indicate that you are applying on behalf of the Reading Cartoons program. And if you are applying on the initiative side, or if, again, you're applying on behalf of your entire organization, the following questions on the application form will be in relation to whatever you select. And lastly, for more applicant information, we're looking for things like total number of full-time staff dedicated to your initiative or program. We want to know the cities, states, and countries that are served by your initiative, just outlining the scope that you reach. In addition to that, we are curious about the populations that you serve. So are you looking to serve families or children or adults or multilingual households? We'd like to know. And lastly, you are going to enter the total number of individuals served in the past 12 months. Um, so we're just looking for, again, scope and impact. I think we are moving on. And Alistair, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, James. Hello, everybody. I'm Alistair Chang. I'm the board chair this year of the advisory board. Honored to be with you all, and a former winner of the International Prize, now working on literacy from the Board of Education in DC. Uh, I will be walking through some of the questions and how reviewers like myself are thinking about these. So, as you see here in section 4, we have short narrative response questions. For question A, and I'll stress this for all of our questions, we very much value specificity, right? So please tell us a clear outcome of what changes for whom and how, what is the delivery model, and when, where, whom. Please be as specific as you can. If your how could be swapped with another group's, my advice would be it's not quite specific enough. For question B, examples of how applicants have answered this in the past include things like skills in decoding and phonics, fluency focus, comprehension focus, family literacy focus, right? But my advice here is to really stress your top skills. If you're naming 12, I think we would question your strategy. And if you name 0, I think we'd question your programming. And then for question C, as one of the reviewers, I think about this in two ways, right? One is around what is the actual literacy gain metric? So pre versus post, what is the reading level movement? How do you actually measure the literacy impact? And on top of that, it would be great to see also what is the impact in the real world, right? What does that change in the person's life and the family's life as well? Uh, Here at one last point is if your success metric is we hosted events or we distributed books, and it's not clear what the bridge for that is to the literacy change or the broader impact on the individual or the family or the community, uh, reviewers will likely question how you measure success. And we are very clear on actually what our evaluation criteria is. So please review that. That is actually how we assess the applications. And my advice here is not to try to touch everything. You only have 250 words. And instead of trying to explain everything you do, my advice would be to make one thing unmistakably clear so that we can very much understand. And one thing I'll stress from what's written here, uh, the sub-criteria are a guide, not a checklist. So please do not think that you need to answer every single one. But again, try to make one thing very, very clear for us to understand, at least, right? Some of the common mistakes that I see for all of the criteria over the years is listing activities instead of making a very clear argument, and using abstract language, so to the point where it's hard for us as the reader to understand the concrete decisions that you actually made. And one more is trying to sound innovative instead of explaining what actually changed and the decisions that you actually made that were different. So here are the 6 criteria: innovation, sustainability, replicability, evidence-based practice, measurable results, and community responsiveness. These criteria are designed for us to surface prioritization and strategy, and across all 6, I will say this again, specific, well-defined choices are much more persuasive for us than expansive claims. So what do we mean by innovation? We've written it out here, and I think please do uh, look over how we are defining these and what we're looking for. Uh, Here you'll see unique, original, creative, and forward-thinking approaches. I think about this as really intentional design choices, right, that improve literacy. So not novelty for its own sake, but an intentional design choice that actually moves the needle on the outcomes that you're measuring. And that can show up in a lot of ways, right? It can show up in how you deliver, how you build partnerships, how you design the program. Um, we're not constrained in, I think we're actually quite expansive in how we think about the various ways you can choose to practice innovation, right? But the strongest applications I've seen over the years explain what was tried before and why a different approach was needed and what specifically you did differently and how you chose to do that. And so as you think about this section, please focus on the design decisions that you made that clearly distinguish your work from other things that may have been tried previously. On this, we are thinking about sustainability as um, a predictable and strong budget, funding sources, stability of service, institutional support, and community participation. Please think about the ways in which your program will be able to stay with the families and the folks that you serve with the program, not just for a moment, but for the duration of what is necessary to accomplish the goals that you sought out to accomplish. And please help us make that clear in terms of the way that you think about practicing sustainability in the current context and environment. I'll end one last time before passing over to Joe. The more specific here that and the more detailed you can get into how you actually do it, right? Rather than the theory of why sustainability matters. I think we all agree there, right? But how do you actually practice it? That very much helps us understand your program and your approach.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Sanchez. I'm a professor of Library and Information Studies at Queens College, and I've been on the board for about 3 years. So replicability, it matters because successful projects shouldn't stay small. And when we evaluate projects for replicability, we're asking simple question, with the initiative's details and guidelines, could another organization reproduce this work somewhere else? So a model that's easy to copy and scale, it spreads literacy faster and more equitably. And not every success is going to be replicable. So projects that rely on a single charismatic leader, a one-time windfall, or a set of very unusual local conditions, it's hard to reproduce. So instead, we're looking for approaches that can be taught, that can be packaged and launched by others. So concrete examples of a replicable design include like train the trainer programs, clear step-by-step guides and tutorials, and solutions that build on existing systems, like healthcare clinics or school networks that can plug into places that already work. So replicable may look different based on the type of program that you're running. So some of the examples are low-cost, hyper-local replication, and these are solutions that communities can adopt without massive outside funding. There's also a systemic change via institutions, so programs that can be embedded in a school or a health system or government services so that they persist over time. Rapid national or digital scale, approaches that can expand quickly, especially via digital platforms, or evidence-led national policy adoption, so models of data that persuade policymakers to adopt them at scale. And the takeaway is that replicability, it's about design, it's about documentation, it's about systems. So if a project can be taught and it can be resourced affordably and tested with data, it's ready to change more lives beyond its original home. The next one is evidence-based practice. So evidence-based practice tells us whether an initiative stands on firm ground, not just the good intentions. And when we assess this criterion, we're looking for a clear line from research and professional literature to the design choices an organization actually makes. So an important distinction is this one isn't about the impact data or whether a program worked. It's about the theory and the prior evidence that shaped the program, the academic or the practice-based foundation. So which studies, which frameworks or proven models did you consult to create the program? And how did that guidance change what you built? And we really need the applicants to be explicit about this. So tell us which research or professional literature you relied on and why, how you translated those findings into concrete program decisions, whether it's curriculum design or staffing models, training approaches, or learner supports, why you choose particular measurement tools, why did you choose your surveys or your interview protocols or your assessments, and how those tools are valid and reliable for your context. So put simply, explain the why behind your methods. If you use a survey, describe why its items capture the construct that you care about, whether it's been validated. And if you adopted a particular protocol, say which parts were evidence-based and how you validated that adaptation. And what we look for on this slide, it's clarity and rigor. Evidence-based practice means documented choices, citations, logical links from research to action, a transparent method section. So we as reviewers can see that the program was purposefully designed to build on what we know already works. And a strong evidence-based program shows not only that it cares about outcomes, but its design choices were informed by research and sound methods and reasoning and how that practice became credible and replicable. Next, we get into measurable results, and that asks the simple but crucial question, how do we know an initiative actually moved the needle on literacy? As reviewers, we want to see improvements compared to a baseline, not just a great touching story, but we want to know that both the numbers and the context behind it. So start with the baseline, show where your target group became, where it began, and demonstrate the change over time. Use both quantitative and quantitative evidence so we get a complete story. Things that are specifically helpful to us are the quantitative measures. So standardized reading and writing scores, minutes spent reading, benchmark or grade level gains, participation rates in literacy programs, attendance and retention, downstream outcomes like school promotions or enrollments in further education or employment changes. Qualitative measures are learner interviews, teacher observations, focus groups, portfolio works that capture the deep shifts in confidence or motivation or reading identity, and use quotes and short vignettes to illuminate the numbers for us. There's also the systems level evidence. So has there been a curriculum adoption, new libraries or book centers that have been opened using these same systems, or a policy change, publications? All of these will demonstrate that broader lasting change beyond individual test scores. So explain your methods briefly, how you collected your data, the timing, was it a pre-test, a post-test, a midline, an inline, any comparison or control groups, and note the measurement tools, like why they're appropriate for your learners. And examples that we find persuasive. So reading fluency increased X percentage from the baseline. 72% of participants moved up at least one reading level. Minutes spent reading per week rose from 45 to 150. Participating schools opened 2 new reading centers and so forth. And finally, make it clear how the literacy gains translate to real life. Is it better grades, job readiness, healthier decision-making, more civic participation? The takeaway would be that measurable results combine rigorous baseline comparison, mixed method evidence, and clear links from literacy gains to meaningful life outcomes. And finally, we have community responsiveness. This is about show us that you're listening first and then designing literacy so that it actually fits people's lives. Reviewers want concrete evidence that the communities weren't an afterthought, that they were partners in your process. So describe your co-design activities, your community focus groups, your parent-teacher councils, your youth design sessions, or pilot workshops where community feedback shaped the final model. Say who participated and how their input changed the program, and be explicit to talk about the responsiveness. So match materials to community priorities, provide affordable, low-tech options. How did you tailor time and place? Like, did you offer sessions at markets, at laundromats, at worship centers, at evening weekend hours to fit a family schedule? Give examples of the adjustments that you made for the community request. Or did it create local governance and stewardship? whether school library councils or volunteer stewards, community advisory boards, parent committees that got involved. So briefly show the results of responsiveness. Once again, the higher attendance of local volunteers, requests for scale, and a quick method, how you gathered the feedback, whether it's surveys, interviews, usage logs, and use that to kind of iterate the community responsiveness. So this means designing with people, not for them. Give us the practical adaptations. How did you work with local leadership? And the low barrier access that you use to turn good programs into trusted, lasting community assets. I'm going to pass it back over to James.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joe. So moving on, we're going to be talking about how to, or what to do to complete the Emerging Strategies application question form. Again, note that your literacy initiative must have been established after 2021 in order to complete this form or to be eligible. Immediately, you'll see that this looks relatively familiar and similar to the top prize application form, at least for the first couple of sections. Again, you're naming your literacy initiative. This should be consistent with the name that you've provided in the general application information form. We also, again, want to know who is completing this application. So please provide the name and contact information of the individual who is completing this form. Again, they will be the main point of contact with Literacy Awards staff for communications about award status and anything else related to your application. Now, here's where the Emerging Strategies application form looks different. For Section 3, we are looking to see the year that the literacy initiative was established. Again, should be in 2021 or after. We're looking to see the total number of full-time staff dedicated to your literacy initiative. We're looking to see all the cities, states, and countries served by your literacy initiative. We're marking the population served, so whether that's children, families, English language learners, we would like to know. And lastly, you're going to enter the total number of individuals served in the past 12 months by your literacy initiative.
Hi, everyone. I'm Salika Lawrence, and I'm a member of the board. It's so exciting to see so many people on this call. There's been a lot of information, and so I just want to take a second to acknowledge the fact that you're here, and I really encourage you to think about all the ranges of opportunities for recognizing the work that you do. So in Section 4, this is an opportunity for you to talk to us about your literacy initiative. We know absolutely nothing about you, okay? So you need to, pull back the curtain and let us know as much as possible what work you're doing. As you've heard before, you can have a very broad organization that's addressing education and literacy on a number of levels. But what specific literacy initiative do you want to spotlight for the Emerging Strategies application? And, provide as much information as possible for us to know. This is not about giving us a lot of statistics and that type of data. It's just an opportunity to recognize something very, very specific that you're trying to implement, and it's at the early stages of your work. Section 4, as you're helping us learn about your organization, we have some specific questions that we want you to think about. Again, the who, what, when, where, and why. If you have a very large organization that's addressing various levels of literacy, why is this an Emerging Strategies initiative? What are you trying to do different here that distinguishes it from other things that you've done before? Is it targeting a specific population? Is it drilling down to something that was overlooked in the past? You heard my colleague talk about the feedback and addressing the community needs. And so if you're noticing that this is an opportunity to be more intentional and responsive to the community that you serve, we'll talk about that, right? And so we really want you to address the questions as much as possible to give us insight into why this is something different and it's a departure for what's been done by your organization in the past, or perhaps a broader initiative that makes it very innovative compared to what others have been doing to try to address a particular literacy issue, whether it's within your community or broadly. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is you've heard this come up over and over again in this information session. We are here to spotlight and recognize the work that you're doing. You're working very hard, and we can only recognize organizations based on the information that you provide for us. And so we really want you to be intentional about your work around literacy specifically. This is a literacy recognition, and literacy has a very broad definition. You can go to the website and see the ways that we are engaging in literacy practice and literacy initiatives from the Library of Congress Literacy Awards. And with that said, make sure that you have a common through line, a common thread here that's showing how your evaluation, your community responsiveness, your program implementation, all of these things are really important. And so spotlighting that with a new initiative through an emerging strategies application form would be a great opportunity to bring recognition to your organization. Okay. On the next slide, again, I think I just mentioned this before, but literacy and impact are important. You can measure impact in a lot of different ways. As a board member, we've had numerous conversations about what impact looks like. You've already heard that it could be qualitative and quantitative. We really honor testimonials. We like surveys, but we like testimonials too, okay? We really want to hear from your participants. And so please don't overlook comments, don't overlook feedback, especially as you heard, if your community members are part of the decision-making cycle of your program. Like, why would you leave that out? Okay, that is very powerful information that could help to create that picture, that image, and the through line around literacy, engagement, and responsiveness. So keep that in mind. I think we've done a really good job in highlighting the needs of literacy and the areas that we would like to support, and the application is straightforward, but I just really wanted to take an opportunity to make sure that you understand how important it is for us to understand your story and how literacy is being advanced in your community by the work you do. Okay, I think I'm sending it back to Alistair.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. So yes, we'll spend this next section talking about feedback and writing tips from what we've seen over the years. So these are some of the most common reasons why applications fall short, and we wanted to bring these up because they are all fixable, right? We want to give these awards to you, and we want to make it as easy for you to express and share what you're working on as possible to do it. So what Dr. Lawrence said at the beginning of her section was that we're really trying to understand how your work shows up in people's lives, right? And so the strongest applications really explain what actually happens and what changes as a result. So I shared this in my section as well, but lack of detail and evidence is going to be really hard to recover from, and it is the most common application challenge that we see from groups that are doing great work. Another one is that we're not seeing the innovation fully come through in what you write. So calling it innovative is not enough. What we're really looking for is clarity on what is distinct about the approach and why that distinction really matters. So please, as we wrote here, be very clear about the innovation. What is the idea? What is the approach? What is the model that makes your work really distinct? And then on the organization's website, I think, we will, and we often will use websites as a reference point. I saw a question in the chat about what do you do if you don't have a website? It's not a requirement per se, but it is where we often turn to if we'd like to learn more. And so an up-to-date, accurate website often helps to validate what's being described in the application, knowing that you have limited space. And so being able to, we as Judy said, get a lot of applications. So it's often more targeted in when we use external resources beyond the application to answer a question. But it is a practice that is common among those of us who are supporting the review process and appreciate it when there is a space where we can learn more. Across all three, I'll just summarize and say that clarity and alignment are really what help make the work easier for us as the reviewers to understand and evaluate what you've put in the application.
I think I'll just jump in here and reiterate that space is at a premium. You have a very little amount of space to maximize your work. And so be strategic and be intentional about what you say and how you say it. Okay. Try not to be repetitive. Try to put your best foot forward in the application. I would also just, you know, remind you again, you've heard it over and over again, this is a literacy award. And so talking about a new tool or innovation or framework that may be spectacular in and of itself, but if you don't draw the parallel and the connection to literacy, we will celebrate you as a board. However, you will not qualify for the award. Okay, so you just really need to just think intentionally around what you're doing for literacy and why it matters. I think unfortunately, putting the application together, getting bogged down with answering the questions and overlooking the strengths that you bring as an organization might be problematic for some orgs. So just, center what you do and why you're making an impact and focus on that in the application. The other thing is when you're thinking about literacy and impact, you could actually be doing a lot of other things to make an impact in your community, right? And so with this award, you're trying to explain to us why literacy is your entry point and the mechanism through which you're trying to make an impact in your community, right? So if you start the conversation there, then you can kind of see how there's a cause and effect relationship happening with the community. And I think if you try to center that conversation, it might come across well in the application. Thank you.
I think another key is to really make it clear what the experience is like. So we are a national board. We aren't familiar necessarily with your location, with your demographics that you're working with. So pull us into your area. Tell us who you're working with. Tell us why it matters. You can lose us sometimes with some of that context. So please be really straightforward about why your program matters in this particular area that you're working in. As my colleagues have said, you've got to write well and clearly because we don't have that much space to tell your story. So really, really be thinking about that. Avoid replicating what we can find on your website or by reiterating the program. We want to know what you do. Tell us what you do and tell us how it's related to literacy. Use very straightforward language. Don't get caught in the jargon, particularly towards researchers. I would say this year because there's a different type of committee. We have different specialties, and we can translate for each other when we're meeting and reviewing if there's something there. Another one is that this is an award, it's not a grant. So tell us what you did, not what you're gonna do, right? And I think that's a really big one that it's great if you have a new model and you're hoping in the next 2 years you're gonna do X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, this is an award for what you've accomplished today as of now. So please keep that in mind that this is an award, not a grant for future work. And really just go over the evaluation criteria and match your narrative towards the evaluation criteria for the best result.
All right. Thank you to our board for providing all that really crucial and helpful context for our applicants. This is probably one of the most important parts of the Literacy Awards application is submitting the package. If you don't submit it, of course, we can't review it. So here are some guidelines and tips on submitting your application package. Just a reminder, a complete application package includes your general applicant information form, a reminder that all applicants are required to complete this form. We're also looking for a completed application question form. Again, this is either the top prize or the emerging strategies application question form. You cannot submit both application forms in the same year. You must select one. And lastly, the completed application package includes 2 letters of recommendation. We recommend that you pick someone who really speaks to your program, someone who has a real insight of the impact of your initiatives. So this can be someone as high up as your governor, or someone like a former student or a parent of a student. Really letters that get to the heart of what your organization is trying to do, and letters that really speak to a certain level of impact are very effective in really enhancing your application. And lastly, this is for international applicants only. A completed application package includes a certification or letter that certifies your not-for-profit status. So be sure to include that information. So we have some application submission deadlines. This is recommended that you save your application form in this format. So organization name _ prize category. So if you're applying on behalf of Acme Book, and this is your top prize application question form, you'll do Acme Book _ top prize. Or if you're, for example, applying with the emerging strategies application question form, you'll enter ABC _ emerging strategies. And similarly, we would like your recommendation letters to be saved in this format. So organization name. So again, if you're Acme Book, you'll enter Acme Book recommendation 1, and then Acme Book recommendation 2. To submit the completed application package, you're going to email us at literacyawards@loc.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on February 17, 2026. Now, this is really important. So if you're seeing this, write this date down, write the time down. We will not accept any applications submitted after 11:59 on February 17th. And this is for when you've submitted your application. We will send you a confirmation email within 48 hours of your submission. This is for us to review your application package and confirm that it is completed. If you don't receive a confirmation email within 48 hours, you have every right to email us at literacyawards@loc.gov to confirm that one, you have sent your application, and 2, that we've received it. So this is just doing a due diligence on both sides.
Great. Thank you so much, James. And I just want to echo James in thanking our board members for sharing their take and their experience as reviewers. Many of our board members represented today have reviewed applications for at least 3, if not more years. And so they are coming at you today with a lot of experience. And I know we were particularly thrilled to be able to provide some constructive feedback on applications that our reviewers have seen and trends that we've seen in sort of the unsuccessful applications as feedback to all of you, and preemptively as you work on your 2026 application. That's not something we've been able to do in the past. So we hope that you found that valuable. And we'll say this at the end as well, but at any point through your application process, if you have any questions, you may reach out to us at literacyawards@loc.gov. And so I hope that you've been finding this session to be valuable so far. I get to wrap up our presentation here by letting you know how we select our applicants, select our winners and honorees through the application selection process. As I have been describing, it is our board members. We have 15 board members this year who spend a lot of time reading through your applications and making the difficult decision of making recommendations to our acting librarian of Congress, Robert Newland, who is the one to make the final award decision. So this is a multi-month process for us and for our board especially, and this will take us through midsummer. So if you don't hear from us for a while after today and after the application deadline, that's because our advisory board is very busy reviewing applications and making recommendations to the acting librarian of Congress. Just to give you an idea of the different professions and backgrounds represented on our advisory board, I have a brief description here in the graphic. All of our board members are also, and their titles are available on our website if you're curious about who all of our star board members are. So I encourage you to visit our website. They all have a connection to literacy. They are all literacy champions in their own right, whether it's through personal or their professional work. And so we're really grateful to have such a strong expertise on our board and to have them be the ones to make this really, really tough decision about who to recommend to the acting librarian. So that's what happens behind the scenes between February 17th and again around midsummer. As a reminder, we will publicly announce all of the winners and honorees on September 8th, which is International Literacy Day. All non-winners will also be contacted on that day. So by September 8th, even though you might not hear from us for a while, again, after the deadline on February 17th, you can count on hearing from us one way or another by September 8th and no later than that. So just be on the lookout for emails from us on or around September 8th. If you do reach out to us midsummer and ask us what your award status is, we will just be reminding you that we will contact you on September 8th. So just want to be able to reiterate that with everyone. And then now we can move into officially our question and answer section of today's agenda. We wrapped up the meeting, the presentation pretty early, which is fine. It gives us more time to answer questions. I know James and I and a couple of the board members have tried to answer questions live through the Q&A box, and I think this is a great opportunity for us as well to reiterate some questions that we think everyone can find valuable in terms of the answers. For example, I'd love to start with just clarifying who is eligible for an Emerging Strategies honoree prize. I think we received several similar questions of a situation where an organization has been around for, let's say, more than 10 years. But they have a new literacy initiative that was established within the past 5 years. Would they be able to apply for the Emerging Strategies honorees category on behalf of the new literacy initiative, even though the organization that the initiative is part of is more than 5 years old? And the answer is yes. That's exactly the kind of scenario we're describing as being eligible for the Emerging Strategies. So it's not limited to a full organization being younger than 5 years. If you have been around for 50 years, but you recently launched a new literacy initiative and would like to try for the Emerging Strategies honorees category, you're totally eligible in that situation to apply. Let's see other questions. And James, feel free to, because I know you've been monitoring the Q&A box, if there are other questions you want us to highlight.
Mm-hmm. Looking through the chat now. Let's see if
We
there's
received a good question, and I think we addressed it a few slides ago, but someone asked if they can apply for more than one prize. The answer is no. We encourage you to submit either just the top prize application form or the Emerging Strategies honorees application form. If you submit a complete application with both forms after February 17th or close to that deadline, we will unfortunately not be able to, it will be disqualified. because we can't make the decision for you, whether, we should be reviewing just your top prize or the emerging strategies. If you happen to submit a complete or an application package with both forms in the next few weeks, we'll probably be asking you to resubmit by choosing just one of the prize application question forms that you submitted. So just proactively, again, encouraging you to just choose between the top prize application question form or the emerging strategies. You cannot submit both.
Hey, Judy, I'm
Yeah.
going to pull up a question that we have in our chat. I don't know if it's popped up, but here the question is, are initiatives that are training for libraries and educators on different literacies instead of children and families directly viable for this award?
Do any of the board members want to try answering this question? So, sure, Alistair.
Yes.
And then Salika.
Great. I'll start by going very broad, Dr. Lawrence. Some of you can bring us back to the actual question, but I think what's applicable for everyone else who's listening in is that we take a relatively expansive definition of literacy, and Judy shared this at the beginning, but we have been using guidance from UNESCO's definition of literacy as the sort of baseline, so please take a look at that. But it's I essentially understand it as navigating the world, right? And so within that comes a lot of various ways that you can think about how to connect that over to what you shared in the chat for your specific context. But if it is helping people to do that, right, I think that we would be very open to understanding how you do it differently and what the impact is on people's lives. Dr. Lawrence?
Right, absolutely. I just want to add that literacies very broadly include different modes, tools, linguistic dialects, geographical parameters. I mean, all of these things. And so that's why when we talked earlier about helping us understand your context and why literacy is the entry point or the initiative to being responsive to that community is very important for us to understand. Okay, thank you.
I think as well, just to add to that, that for a train the trainer type program, we do want to find or to really think about what are the measurable results? In what ways do we know that your program was effective to getting literacy? So yes, you've trained another professional to do something, and now what's the next step from there? Are we measuring their output? And in what way can you present those results to us or gather those results and present them to us?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joe, Salika, and Alistair. We received a handful of questions seeking additional guidance on recommendation letters. And I think most of these questions came in actually before James's slide towards the end, where he reviewed some pointers on rec letters. But could we use this as an opportunity, maybe from the board, any guidance you could provide on for our potential applicants here when they're thinking about who to ask to write their recommendation letter? I know just one sort of straightforward guidance is to try to keep your recommendation letters limited to 1 page. Again, it's a lot of applications that our reviewers are having to go through. So limiting each recommendation letter to 1 page helps us a lot. And then with that, I don't know if there's any other guidelines or guidance that you would all want to provide or some tips. Yeah, Alice.
Happy to start. So it doesn't hurt to have someone who is, very well known and famous, but I would prioritize being able to share details around the contours of the experience of what it means to actually go through your program, right? When we're reviewing, are hungry to understand what it means to actually experience what you have come up with and what you do every day and how hard you work, right? And so as much as the recommendation letters can touch on additional details regarding what it means to actually be in partnership with your program, to be a beneficiary of your program, um, and help us understand what it is that you do. That for me, as one of the reviewers, I find that very helpful, right? How about you, Dr. Lawrenson?
Yes, I would agree 100% with everything you said. I would also agree with James's point about your selection of the review, the recommendation, the person who writes that letter is crucial because it should be somebody who knows your program on in a multidimensional way, right? And so as a reviewer, you can clearly distinguish these letters. And we've had conversations about categorizing the letters as we look at them, right? So you can read a letter and the passion, the connection, the impact, the sustainability, all of that comes through in the way it was crafted. Okay. And so please don't discount that as an opportunity to spotlight what you've done, to celebrate what you've done, and just think very intentionally about this as a package. You're putting together an entire package that tells a comprehensive story. And so the person you reach out to for that letter could be the pivotal voice in advancing your application because of the way that they've captured your vision, your mission, and their experience with your organization.
Thank you, Alistair and Salika. Could I ask a follow-up question to that? And I think you both kind of addressed this, but we have a very specific question about donors and funders not being listed as examples of strong recommendation writers. Was that intentional on our part? And in other words, would a program's funder be a poor choice for a letter of recommendation?
Again, I think this question aligns with helping us understand your organization and the question about the composition of your board and how you're telling that story. And so, you know, it's not just about having this person write a letter. Why were they selected to write the letter? Like to what extent are they providing insight into the achievement of your mission in that particular context? Okay, so we can't say yes or no. I don't think we can say yes or no in this situation. It's like, you can have three different funders, and then you can have, you know, you can select one person from that pool of three because you feel like that person is an advocate and a champion for your organization and can lend a voice comparable to the other two, right? So it just depends on their level of engagement, what they actually know about what you're doing, rather than, being a supporter for your cause.
Yeah, thank you, Salika. I have a few additional follow-up questions regarding recommendation letters, but this question is about parents from communities we serve don't speak English, and we promote literacy in home languages. If they write us letters of recommendations, they'll probably write it in their home language. Can we translate them to English for the committee? And the translation would still very much come from the heart of the writer. Salika's nodding her head. Yes, that is totally fine. I think in that case, it would help to submit both copies, the original letter and your translated
Yes.
copy. That would be totally fine, but that would count as one recommendation letter, and then we would still need another one. But yes, that's a great question. This also is a great opportunity to just remind folks on the call that currently we can only accept applications that are submitted in English. Unfortunately, we can't accept applications that are written in any language other than English at this time. So just putting that out there. Another question about letters of recommendation. If an organization is reapplying, can letters of recommendation be a new letter coming from the same recommender as the prior submission, or should they be finding a totally new person to write the recommendation letter? I'm happy to take this one. It can be the same person. We're looking for just current. I think in this case, we're looking for current information. Again, it's less the stress is less on who's actually writing it, but we just want to make sure it's a current application package. So it would be okay if you asked the same person to write the letter.
On that note, I did see a question that I've answered in the chat that I want to reiterate here. If you are going to use the same person, or if you are reapplying, you cannot reuse a recommendation letter from a previous year. You must submit a new recommendation letter as well. Can be from the same person, but it must be current and up to date to whatever year you're applying.
All right, so we have a question. We have learner profile videos that provide evidence of qualitative impact. Is there a way to share links as part of the application? Happy to start us off with this one, and then if any of the board members want to add, please do. But we ask that you, we ask that you focus on the components of the application. And what I mean by that is there aren't additional areas or sections of the application where we invite you to add additional links to support your application package. And so that's where Joe, in his application writing tips, was really encouraging you to be strategic and be very clear in the written narrative responses that you're providing about the work that you're doing. I think a simpler way to answer this question is you cannot provide additional links outside of your website. Our board members, again, are very limited in their capacity, and with the number of applications we receive, it would be difficult to ask them to look at multiple video submissions for each application in addition to what we're already asking you to provide. So rather than trying to send us additional links, I would encourage you to really just try to take advantage of the word limit and the space that you have to describe the work that you provide. Yes, and that's a good point. The website is fair game, so if you're sharing if you're sharing your organizational website link with us, our board members, our reviewers do visit your website. And if you have videos on their website, that's part of their research and exploration process. So if the videos are already on your website, that would be fine. But just focusing on your website and then the questions asked in the application package would be great.
Judy, we have a good question here, I think, for the board. Hello, my curious question is, what if an initiative has made an impact, but was only limited explicitly in the location or geographic region it was established? My only concern is that it's not a national initiative, but it is a localized one that has made enough of an impact to ensure that it can be replicated in more than one state.
Apply. Apply.
Yeah,
Go for it. It's emerging strategies. Yeah, go
totally.
for it.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I'd add is, right, when we think about replicability overall for all the awards, it's less about are you everywhere already, and more about how are you thinking about taking the insights that you've learned and the innovation that you've built and making it possible for someone in a different context, whether you do it or not, but another group in another context or your group, to be able to customize it for that other population and community, right? And so I think for us, the reflection on how you think about scale is important, not necessarily that it already has reached everybody in the world already, right? We'd love to see that someday, but I think it's the It's the thoughtfulness behind how you design for it.
Thank you both. Looking at some of the questions we answered in the Q&A to see if there are any we want to highlight out here. I know that we received a couple variations of this question, which basically asks, can I apply as an individual? Unfortunately, we are only able to recognize organizations. So any application that is submitted by an individual and about an individual and their impact, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to recognize that application. We do ask that you work with an organization and submit as an organization. There was also a question in the Q&A box about collaborative initiatives. So I think this particular example, I'm sorry, I just can't locate it right now, but this particular example, I believe, was about an individual, maybe professor or an academic. They collaborate with a community organization. How do I submit a joint application between myself as an individual and this university or partnership? Does any one of our board members want to try answering that? I can help get us started. So our current application package is not designed to, unfortunately, it's not designed for collaborative projects. So in this case, I would encourage you to work it out with your community organization partner in submitting one application that is to recognize, one collective project versus focusing on, the division of roles, for example. And as part of that, thinking about if and when you are selected, thinking about who and the name that you want recognized by the Literacy Awards program. And so thinking even more practically about the award funding process. When we're ready to cut your checks and distribute your award prize funds, we can only deposit it into one bank account. And so that's part of the strategy in putting your application together with a partner, is thinking through, okay, what initiative are we putting forward? And behind the scenes, you can work it out with your partner about who will be the designated award recipient. And then you can, of course, work it out on your end about how you might want to divide the prize funds. But all of this to say, unfortunately, our application isn't quite designed to recognize collaborative approaches where we have two stakeholders submitting a joint application. It's really currently designed to recognize one particular literacy initiative.
Yeah, I'd like to add here. I saw a couple of questions about the size of the organization. So just following up on your comment, if you are part of a large organization, but you have a specific initiative within that large organization, you can apply on behalf of that specific initiative. That's a literacy initiative. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you are a smaller organization and your entire focus as a small organization revolves around literacy, you're applying on behalf of your entire organization that has a literacy focus, right? So there are two different pathways here that you need to think about in terms of your application.
We have a really good question that talks about one of our evaluation criteria. So the question is, my organization is in the teacher training lane. In literacy, we are all about evidence-based literacy best practices. Is that innovative enough?
I think about this a lot. The particular subject that you're asking about. And so what I would say is, if what our ask would be, I think, would be to describe how things have been done in that lane previously or normally, and share how you think about it differently, and what is an approach that would push that lane forward, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, formal that kind of training does trickle down and is critical for supporting students learning how to read. And we'd love to know how you think about that relative to how other people think about it, right? And how other groups think about it. Do help us, though, by stressing what the impact is on the student and not only the educator, right? And what is the impact of that on the community at large as well? I think if it's the entire focus is on how the educator benefits, I do think that there will be reviewers who question, what is the logic that then flows from that, even if it is very clear to you, particularly for those of us on the board who don't come from the formal education sector, right? And so, as Judy shared, the board is made up of a really diverse range of people, and that is our strength. And that is why, we come to this from various perspectives. But I think, I work in your space that you're talking about, and I think about it all the time. But it's not necessarily obvious to others who don't.
Yes, I'd like to also add that um, in teacher preparation and training, there are very standardized parameters there for accreditation. And so when we think about innovation, you have to be very intentional about the departures that you're making from those typically accredited expectations. And you can do that by thinking about spaces that are overlooked, right? Or ways that you're providing access, or even the procedures that are used, right? So let me be concrete and say early childhood as a concrete example tend to focus primarily on the students, but maybe working with families and mothers and caregivers around supporting, early language development, right? And being intentional about the spaces where you would go to gain more access to create a comprehensive wraparound experience is an extra step for an early childhood teacher preparation program, right? So it's like, how are you taking those extra steps with regards to teacher preparation? If you're in that space, that's really pushing the agenda beyond what has traditionally been done, right? And so we can kind of think as we move up the K-12 spectrum, who's been overlooked and what are the traditional ways that we've been doing things and how are we pushing that, right? To kind of think differently about access and literacies, right? Plural, across the spectrum. And those are ways to be innovative in programs, especially that frankly haven't changed very much in decades, unfortunately. So.
Oh, Judy, I think you're muted, by the way.
Classic. I made it through almost to the end without making that mistake. But I just, looking at the time, want to thank everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. I know there are a few questions we haven't been able to answer. You're welcome to, and if you don't mind taking the minute to just email them to us directly at literacyawards@loc.gov. James and I will be more than happy to continue helping to answer your questions. Just a reminder that the application deadline is February 17th at 11:59 p.m. A recording of this information session will be made available, but it'll take about 1 to 2 weeks for that recording to post on our website. In the meantime, you will be able to access the presentation slides as early as tomorrow on our website, www.loc.gov/literacy. So again, I want to thank our board members for just guiding us through this conversation. And thank you, James, as well. We hope you all have a great afternoon, and we look forward to receiving your applications in a few weeks. Thanks, everybody.